Today, I am going to discuss with you the leadership styles of Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States. October 4th, 1927 was the beginning of one of the greatest sculptures and most popular attractions in all the United States. It would take close to 400 men and women 14 years to complete this task. Mount Rushmore was the vision of artist Gutzon Borglum to immortalize four presidents in the side of a mountain. He listed the reasons that he chose these presidents. George Washington represented the birth of our nation. Thomas Jefferson represented the expansion of our nation with the Louisiana Purchase. Abraham Lincoln represented the preservation of our nation during the Civil War. Finally, Theodore Teddy Roosevelt represented the development of our nation. Teddy Roosevelt is quoted as saying, "The first requisite of a good citizen in this republic of ours is that he shall be able and willing to pull his weight, that he shall not be a mere passenger." Most understand the reasoning behind the first three men represented, but why the fourth in Teddy Roosevelt? Theodore Roosevelt was born on October 27, 1858, to his parents, Theodore Sr. and Martha Bullock Roosevelt. He was born in New York City and was the second of four children. His family was wealthy as his father worked as a merchant and banker. He also was involved in philanthropic endeavors. The children were homeschooled by private tutors. Teddy, as he was affectionately called, was nearsighted and suffered from asthma as a child. He was a sickly child and was encouraged by his father to strengthen his mind and body. He graduated from Harvard in 1880 and was married a few months later to Alice Hathaway Lee. She died 4 years later after giving birth to their only child. He left New York for the Badlands of what would soon become South Dakota. He returned 2 years later and found love once again with Edith Kermit Caro, and they were married in 1886. They had 5 children together, and with his first child, they remained in New York in Oyster Bay, Long Island, for the rest of their lives. He served several political positions throughout his lifetime, including state assemblyman, cabinet member to Benjamin Harris, New York City Police Commissioner, Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Governor of New York, Vice President, and the 26th President of the United States. He left the presidency after finishing his second term to go on a safari from 1909 to 1910, collecting several specimens of birds and animals. He ran again for president in 1912, but lost to Woodrow Wilson as a third-party candidate. He died on January 6, 1919, at the age of 60 in Oyster Bay, New York. Today, we are going to look at the leadership of one of America's most energetic presidents by examining 5 leadership qualities from Peter Northouse's book, Leadership, Theory and Practice. We will explore how Roosevelt's real-life experiences helped shape his legacy and why his leadership style still feels relevant today. The 5 key leadership approaches or qualities we will look at today are trait theory, transformational leadership, authentic leadership, servant leadership, and skills approach. According to Northouse, traits are a set of distinctive characteristics, qualities, or attributes that describe a person. Among his many traits are bravery, charisma, confidence, courage, determination, intelligence, resilience, self-reliance, and vision. As a child, Teddy was nearsighted and suffered from asthma. He was a sickly child and was encouraged by his father to strengthen his mind and body. He made himself into a leader, studying hard, boxing, hunting, and eventually charging up San Juan Hill with the Rough Riders. His grit and moral courage were qualities no one could overlook. He said, "If I had not had asthma, I might never have even tried to become vigorous and strong. If I had not become strong, I might never have gone to the Badlands, or gone to war, or entered politics. I never would have been president." In 1897, he was offered command of the 1st United States Volunteer Cavalry. He accepted. However, he suggested that Captain Leonard Wood take command as the colonel due to his experience as a soldier, and he would be his second in command as lieutenant colonel. When Colonel Wood left for San Antonio, Roosevelt stayed behind to fulfill his duties as Assistant Secretary of the Navy until a replacement had arrived. Finally, on May 12, 1898, he left for San Antonio. Less than a month later, Roosevelt and his men, the Rough Riders, were summoned to Tampa, Florida. They arrived on June 2nd and were able to ship out on June 13th. They arrived in Cuba on June 23rd and proceeded to march to Siboney. He and his men won their first battle on June 24th, 1898. Then on July 1st, 1898, Roosevelt led the Rough Riders up San Juan Hill. He had no thought for his own life, only moving forward against the enemy, bringing the volunteer Rough Riders and the white and black regulars together into a singular fighting force. They won a great victory that day. Transformational leadership is the process whereby a person engages with others and creates a connection that raises the level of motivation and morality in both the leader and the follower. The square deal is the name given to Roosevelt's domestic legislative program. He did not coin the phrase, but his frequent use of it caused journalists to attribute it to him. In 1902, during a coal strike, he mediated an end to the troubles by treating both the bosses and the workers equally. On May 27, 1903, President Roosevelt included the phrase in speeches to 2 different audiences in Montana. To the colored citizens of Butte, Montana, he said, "In Santiago, I fought beside the colored troops of the 9th and 10th Cavalry. If a man is good enough to have him shot at while fighting beside me under the same flag, he is good enough for me to try to give him a square deal in civil life." That same day, Roosevelt told the Silver Bow Labor and Trades Assembly of Butte that he was one who tries to be an American president, acting upon the principle of giving a square deal to each and every one. President Roosevelt transformed the public's consciousness about the nation's role in domestic and foreign affairs. His bully pulpit was used to communicate directly to the American people through speeches, press, and media. He used it to shape public opinion beyond official legislation. Authentic leadership describes leadership that is transparent, morally grounded, and responsible for people's needs and values. Vice President Roosevelt demonstrated authentic leadership on September 14, 1901, when he was suddenly thrust into the presidency because William McKinley died after being shot by an assassin. Theodore Roosevelt was sworn in as the 26th President of the United States. At only 42 years of age, President Roosevelt became the youngest president ever to hold office. Roosevelt immediately demonstrated the hallmarks of an authentic leader. He acted consistently with his values. He engaged openly with both supporters and detractors. He relied on his self-knowledge and moral convictions to guide uncharted policy territory. His succession wasn't merely a change in personnel. It was a shift in the tone and substance of the presidency, a living example of authentic leadership in action. In 1912, when Roosevelt disagreed with his successor, William Howard Taft, Roosevelt didn't stay silent. He ran against him, splitting the Republican vote in 1912 and creating the Bull Moose Party. It was a bold move that cost him the presidency. but he did it because he believed in the progressive cause. Servant leadership focuses on meeting the needs of others. Roosevelt embodied this with his environmental and social reforms. Roosevelt believed the government should help those who couldn't help themselves. He advocated for consumer protection, fair labor practices, and safety regulations. He championed the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act of 1906 after The Jungle, a book written by Upton Sinclair, exposed unsanitary conditions in the meatpacking industry. His efforts to regulate railroads, improve meatpacking safety, and pursue antitrust actions reflect a commitment to serving the public good. Roosevelt's passion for conservation, including the establishment of national parks, forests, and wildlife refuges, efforts rooted in stewardship for future generations, shows how Roosevelt viewed public service as a moral obligation. He protected over 230 million acres of public land, about the size of Texas, creating national parks and forests. Roosevelt did not see government as a machine for the elite. He saw it as a platform to serve ordinary Americans. The skills approach is a leader-centered perspective that emphasizes the competencies of leaders. In 1903, President Roosevelt wanted to build a canal through the Isthmus of Panama. At the time, Panama was a territory of Colombia. Colombia was not interested in selling the land to the United States. So, President Roosevelt encouraged the people of Panama to begin a revolution for their independence. With the United States military assistance, Panama won its independence and allowed the United States to begin construction of the Panama Canal. President Roosevelt wanted to expand the United States' influence as a world leader in foreign policy. In 1905, he brokered a peace deal between Russia and Japan, who were at war with each other, from February 1904 until September 1905. President Roosevelt became the first American to win the Nobel Peace Prize in 1906. Even though while researching this presentation there was little mention of his faith, the scriptural comparison to the leadership styles of Theodore Roosevelt is varied in its nature. He possessed several traits that made him a strong leader. The one that was prevalent to me was his courage. Joshua 1:9 states, "Have not I commanded thee, be strong and of a good courage? Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest." His transformational leadership through the square deal wanted every man to be treated fairly. Micah 6:8 speaks of what the Lord expects from us. "He has showed thee, O man, what is good, and what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God." In his authentic leadership, he said what he meant, and he meant what he said. Jesus spoke of the authenticity in his Sermon on the Mount when he taught, "But let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay. For whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil." Theodore Roosevelt was concerned about leaving things for the next generation in the establishment of the national parks and his conservation efforts. This compares to the creation mandate found in Genesis 1:28, and that we are to be stewards of God's earth. Finally, he used his skills for diplomacy and encouraged peace between Russia and Japan. Romans 12:18 declares, "If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men." Roosevelt mastered many things during his lifetime. He was an accomplished author, historian, adventurist, rancher, cabinet member, governor, vice president, and president. His ability to communicate, negotiate, and strategize made him an exceptionally well-rounded leader. His command of policy and language was not accidental. It was cultivated. He believed leadership was a lifelong process of learning. Roosevelt combined natural habits, bold vision, deep values, service-mindedness, and broad skills. A timeless example of leadership in action. Far better it is to dare mighty things to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those timid souls who neither enjoy much nor suffer much.